Russia's sudden and aggressive retaliation against Europe has sent shockwaves across the global economic landscape, marking a new phase in a conflict that is no longer limited to battlefields or diplomatic halls. Analysts around the world are calling it an undeniable escalation, an economic war unfolding in real time. And once again, the views of political realist John Mearsheimer are resurfacing, as many claim the crisis is proving his predictions right. For years, he warned that pushing Russia into a corner would provoke the very confrontation Western leaders hoped to avoid. Now, Europe is grappling with the consequences of that strategy. The heart of this economic retaliation lies in Russia's strategic use of energy, commodities, and financial leverage. Europe, heavily dependent on Russian oil, gas, and raw materials for decades, is suddenly discovering the true cost of severing ties with one of its biggest resource suppliers. Moscow's latest moves include tightening export restrictions and redirecting vital energy flows toward Asia. European industries, from manufacturing to transportation and agriculture, are feeling the pressure as prices spike and supply chains strain under the new reality. For many households across Europe, energy bills have reached levels unimaginable just a few years ago. What makes this moment even more explosive is the timing. European economies were already struggling with inflation, rising living costs, and political divisions. Russia's countermeasures have amplified those weaknesses, exposing a vulnerability that leaders in Brussels and Berlin long believed they had outgrown. The irony of the situation is hard to ignore. While policymakers pushed for energy independence from Moscow, they have unintentionally accelerated economic instability at home. Meanwhile, Russia has solidified new partnerships with China, India, and several Middle Eastern nations, softening the impact of Western sanctions far more effectively than most analysts expected. Mearsheimer's arguments now feel less like theoretical warnings and more like a live documentary. His core claim was simple: great powers react aggressively when threatened in their own strategic neighborhood, and Western attempts to expand influence near Russia's borders would trigger exactly this kind of confrontation. Europe's belief that economic pressure would force Russia to retreat has instead resulted in a prolonged standoff with severe consequences for both sides. Some European governments are beginning to question whether the long-term strategy is sustainable. As Europe scrambles to find alternatives, the geopolitical game expands. The US is increasing its influence and supplying energy to European states, but at a far higher cost than Russian supplies. This dynamic is creating friction within the European Union, as some nations feel that Washington is benefiting while Europeans bear the financial burden. Protests over energy prices, declining purchasing power, and growing dissatisfaction with political leadership are becoming common across the continent. Economic uncertainty is reshaping public opinion, fueling debates over whether loyalty to Western policies is worth the domestic fallout. Russia, on the other hand, is portraying this moment as proof of Western weakness. State media is celebrating Europe's struggles and framing them as victories for Russian resilience. The Kremlin's narrative suggests that the West underestimated Russia's capacity to adapt, innovate, and survive long-term pressure. In some ways, they may have a point. Russia's pivot to non-Western markets has been faster and more successful than predicted, while Europe finds itself caught in an energy trap with limited escape routes. One of the most alarming aspects of this crisis is that there is no clear path toward de-escalation. Economic warfare has replaced traditional diplomacy, and both sides are digging deeper into retaliatory strategies. Europe continues to propose new sanctions, but each round seems to hit European citizens harder than Russian elites. Meanwhile, Russia's counter-moves are designed to inflict slow, compounding damage, pressure that increases over months and years rather than days. At this stage, the world is watching what many analysts describe as a turning point in global power structures. The US and Europe remain powerful, but their unity is being tested. Russia is isolated but defiant, determined to reshape its economic dependencies and global alliances. And behind all of this, John Mearsheimer's long-standing warnings echo louder than ever, reminding policymakers that ignoring geopolitical realities often leads to consequences far more severe than the threats they were trying to prevent. Europe now faces a future where energy scarcity, political division, and economic uncertainty have become part of everyday life. Russia's revenge is not loud or dramatic. It is slow, strategic, and deeply painful for the Western economies that once felt untouchable. The question is no longer whether this is economic war, The question is how long it will last and which side will reach its breaking point first.